Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Few Podcast. My name is Jess. I'm here with my co-host, Alex.
Hello, hello.
And today we're going to find out if you are bad with money, right?
Yeah. Should we say yes and just be over?
Just be done.
Thank you for coming. I'm just kidding.
Oh, so today's topic is inspired by a blog post that I wrote entitled, Are You Bad with Money? And it was designed intentionally to catch attention. I've heard people share with me that they feel like they are bad with money, and I have feelings about what is likely going on in their brain and in their minds and behind all of that expression of I'm bad with money. And money's a loaded topic, and I feel compelled to help people dig below that idea that they are bad with money and discover a little bit more about what is fueling those thoughts. Because my belief and my experience is that when you choose to identify as something, which is what you're doing when you say, I am, that actually can infer and lead to actions that align with that belief, even if that's not who you are. So I'm excited to talk about this today.
I am too.
I am not suggesting that you are bad with money. I want to talk about the shame
It's okay, Jess.
that I do believe is behind those words and where it comes from and how maybe we can help people shift the narrative so that they can start seeing themselves in a different light, producing better actions that lead to better outcomes.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm here right now.
Thank you.
All right. So when you hear someone say, I'm bad with money, what kind of stands out to you? What's the things that you think about?
Yeah. So one thing that people may not know about me is my undergrad at college was in psychology. So
is that why you're always analyzing
that's
me?
why I'm always analyzing you.
I should have known this before when we started working with it. Yeah.
Too late now.
Okay, fine.
I pursued that degree because I really loved understanding why people do what they do from an individual standpoint, what leads people to make decisions and what leads people to believe certain things and feel certain ways. And so when I hear somebody say, I'm bad with money, to me, that says I am, which is how they are identifying. I am someone who can't manage money or can't make good decisions with money or can't save money. Like it's an identity. It's not just actions, but it's tied to something that ultimately they believe is broken or wrong about them. And they don't just accept their flaws as mistakes. They internalize that as part of who they are. And instead of using that as a moment to learn on how to do something differently in the future, they embed that as I'm someone who makes bad decisions with regards to money. And that deeper narrative is really tied to their self-worth and does ultimately inform some of the decisions that they do make about money. So
kind of holds them back too.
It does. Yeah. But what they don't know that I believe is true is that can be changed. So when I hear somebody say, I am, and then they follow it with something afterwards, I always lean in because I want to know what they think they are.
Yeah.
And that's important.
So why do people conflate financial mistakes with their identity? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, one reason I think is that it's because money decisions can be public, either by choice, the car that they drive, or the places that they have memberships to or don't have it. If you're a golfer, like if somebody who has a lot of money, has quote unquote maybe made good financial decisions, built or amassed a certain amount of wealth, can choose a certain level of a golf membership at a certain kind of club.
Right.
This is very, very...
This sounds like an Augusta problem.
It's an Augusta thing, for sure. But also private schools, right? versus public schools. Like a lot of choices that we get to make in life are somewhat filtered through our financial capacity, or, do we have the money to do those kinds of things? So money can be very public, and the decisions that you make, people can internalize as, I am forced to make this decision because I do or don't have enough money. And so along with that can come some sense of judgment that either they are inflicting upon themselves or they're just accepting from other people, because sometimes there is some judgment that other people may have about that. And another one is cultural pressure that are associated with this sense or identity or mark
Yeah.
of worth.
Yeah. We see that a lot in the Armenian culture.
Yeah, I imagine. So, I mean, I'd love to hear an example comes to mind.
Well, you know, it's early on is kind of even going back to when you're going to school is like, okay, you are quote unquote successful, or as a parent, if your kid either becomes a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it may be. So some of those things kind of get passed down, and then just everything has to do with the comparing yourself to your other Armenian families and so forth. Oh, are we as successful as them? They're business owners. They're this, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of definitely cultural pressures there when it comes to financial success. And it's kind of sad because I almost feel like, and I'm generalizing here, but you start to see some families where you're like, they act like they're richer than they really are, just kind of to show on the outside, almost like a peacocking type of thing, right? So, but you're like, I know their finances, they're not in a position to be able to do that stuff. But again, this just goes back to that cultural pressure, how they feel about themselves and how they want to be seen in public.
Right. I think a big one that comes to mind just from my upbringing is that the people who tithed more, gave more in
Yeah.
church, were the ones who had the leadership positions.
Right, right.
And so they were considered and seen as more religious, more respectable in that sense. And the identity, the association with that identity was giving more makes you a better Christian or a better person. So I think it's embedded in a lot of layers of society, whether it's your family heritage or your spiritual community. There's just a lot of reasons why people who feel like if they have made a mistake and or don't have a lot of money, may feel like they are less of a person, less good of a person, because they haven't demonstrated their wealth in a way that their community respects and highlights.
Yeah.
And that just becomes almost even a barrier to them being able to figure out what to do next.
Yeah. And they start to make bad decisions just for that reason.
Right.
You talk a lot about Brene Brown. I've heard you share a bunch of different things from her. How does her definition of shame play into financial struggles?
Yeah. So back to this whole sense of community, something that I believe very strongly is people not only want to, but need to belong. And a lot of our structures in society will grant you maybe even a false sense of belongingness, but still belongingness in exchange for dollars.
Right.
And so I have noticed that for people who have a deep sense of shame around money, not only do they not have as much belongingness in a lot of cases in the communities that they are a part of, but they feel they are unworthy to have access to those things. And that tips over even into their belief about whether or not they are worthy of financial success. And I've seen it happen a lot of times in the church where those two ideas get really mixed up of, am I not having financial success because I'm not doing the right things with my money?
Right.
Like, is it me? Am I the problem? And that can create this cycle that really feeds itself. And eventually it does become the problem, because that shame, think about whenever you've been ashamed of something, your reaction is to
Mm-hmm.
draw back, to hide. And when you draw back and hide from a financial problem, it doesn't go away.
Right.
When you hide from credit card debt, your credit card debt doesn't just magically
Yeah.
disappear.
Yeah. It's kind of a weird spiral to an extent,
Because
right?
you stop managing that credit card debt. Guess what? It gets bigger. It gets worse.
Yeah.
People start calling you.
Yeah.
Then you start avoiding the phone.
Yeah.
And it really does become a whirlwind of a cycle that piles on as you go along and continue to hide from these financial problems. The solution is, the first piece is just recognizing that you're not stuck in a money problem cycle. You're stuck in a shame cycle.
So true.
And that is the first step, I believe, to reclaiming agency over your finances. It's not the money cycle problem that you need to address first. It's the shame.
All right. No, I appreciate you sharing that. That's super helpful. In regards to that, when we talk about money worthiness, right?
Do you deserve to have money?
Yeah. What does that mean exactly? And, how can someone start to believe that they're worthy of that money?
In some ways, to me, it ties back to basic human rights. I do believe that everyone deserves financial security, a roof over your head, and a warm bed at night, and clothes on your body, and enough money to provide food and sustenance. And those are things that every human should have access to.
Yeah.
And that is, unfortunately, partly due to sometimes this shame cycle, partly due to messages that you may have heard through your family or through your religious community or through other places that no, you don't deserve
Right.
to have something. You have to work, you have to earn,
Yeah.
in order to be afforded those privileges, as if a roof over your head is a privilege, right? Sometimes we do make mistakes with our money that lead us to not having access to levels
Mm-hmm.
of a roof over your head,
Mm-hmm.
right? But to recognize and stop in that mistake and give yourself the important feedback of, that was a mistake, I'm learning, and I'm improving. And
And
that
that's not easy.
it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's the reason why there's millions of homeless people. It's because
Right.
it's not easy.
Yeah.
To stop yourself in that moment and say, I'm not a bad person. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm capable of learning from that and
Yeah.
improving it better.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not, brought onto yourself. It could be health debt based on a medical emergency or other things or whatever it is. But there's definitely a different way of thinking about it. And as you said, kind of learning from that and moving forward.
And that to me is very different than me saying I deserve to have
Right.
everything that Alex has. That's not what we're doing here. Again, similar to some other conversations that we've had, money's a very personal mode of moving about in this world.
Correct.
It affords you and allows you the opportunity to experience this world in the way that matters to you. The way that Mother Teresa used money is very different than the way that most other people use money, especially me. I respect her tremendously, but I'm not trying to access the world in the exact same way that she did. And that's also, I think, super important to keep in mind, that, yes, while there are some basic human rights that everyone should be afforded, there are a lot of levels of each of those things, and the access to each of those sometimes is related to your own ability to learn,
Right.
from your financial mistakes and grow and improve. And there is no ceiling to what is acceptable from a wealth standpoint. There's a mansion is not a bad financial decision is if it's within your financial means and something that matters to you. And so there's no, again, whether we're at the bottom or at the top, we're not placing a value system on how people express their money. And we're also not limiting ourselves and the opportunities that we can have in this world. I am worthy of money to the degree that I can earn it and attach it to the things that are important to me. There's no level of that that is wrong, and there's no application of that that is wrong for me as long as it is attached to my values and used in a way that is a positive force in the world. I think that worthiness is something that's worth exploring, or what do you believe you're worthy of having? Certainly an exercise to do, and where you're at, checking in with yourself where you're at now, and maybe ways that you need to grow to improve that belief of yourself.
That was super helpful, Jess. Thank you. As we get ready to wrap up here, one last thing is, what's one actionable step to shift from I'm bad with money to growth?
So one of the resources that people will have available to download from our website is a money beliefs worksheet. And the action step, if you find yourself either in your car, laying in bed at night, worried about things, every time you open up your bank account, whatever it is, if you find yourself replaying this message of I am bad with money, or I don't have enough money, or I wish I had more money, it's taking that message that you are giving yourself, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes on an hourly basis, and replacing it with a message that moves you toward the future self, the future person that you want to be. So if it's I'm bad with money, maybe replacing that with I'm learning about money. And so I created this worksheet to help people maybe identify. Sometimes you don't even know the messages that are there until you hear it spoken out loud, and you can go, oh gosh, I say that all the time. And then not just identifying it, but replacing it with something that is going to move you toward where you want to be. So that's something you could also, if the money mantra thing is not your style, you could just identify one small action that is sabotaging your ability to grow your wealth. And so maybe that's automatically saving. And so every time your paycheck comes in, identify an amount that immediately gets swept over into either your retirement plan or to an emergency fund that's hard for you to access immediately. Get it out of there. So sometimes maybe instead of a money mantra, you're just going to start small with an action item. And finally, if you just want to do some reflection, grab a journal and just start thinking about the ways that you are spending your money and writing those things down and identifying every time you write that down, kind of like if you're working with a nutrition coach, they're going to tell you to sit down and write down a list of the things that you eat during the day.
Right.
Well, maybe this is sitting down at the end of the week and writing down all the things you spend your money on and really just sitting with it and deciding for yourself whether or not that's aligned with the kind of person that you want to be and the kind of future that you want to build for yourself.
That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah. And as you mentioned, you did create a money beliefs worksheet that people can find on our website at joinfew.com.
That's right.
joinfew.com. And if you get a chance, head over there. You could download that, and it'll definitely help you make better decisions, help you with positive beliefs. And
I think it's going to improve your daily mood. If you're someone who speaks this kind of thing to yourself throughout the day, I think you're going to notice that not only are you better with money, but you're happier with yourself.
Yeah. And we always need to improve ourselves on a daily basis. So this is really helpful. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Alex.
We'll see you next time.